wasn't Judy Fields. That was the Simpson project. But I
That's
agree.
what I meant,
Yeah.
Simpson. That's what I meant.
But yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
was
almost
all the
said-
same letters. Here, just sign here.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, that's what you're gonna do, right? I mean, if I was, you wanna have something prepared, I would just like maybe have a different variation of something.
Yeah, be a little
Here's a-
sneaky.
here's a-
Good evening. I would like to call December 17, 2024 Planning Commission meeting to order. Please note this meeting is being hosted through live stream on the city website and by teleconference via Zoom. I would like to remind the planning commissioners to have their microphones turned on and positioned so the audience can hear. Director Monique, maybe please have roll call.
Commissioner Worth,
Here.
Commissioner Clark,
Present.
Commissioner Hill,
Here.
Vice Chair Papp,
Here.
Chair Beamsterfer.
Here. Commissioner Hill, can we do invocation / salute, please?
Sure. Invocation first. Lord, we ask that you bless this meeting here tonight and give us the wisdom to make the most informed decisions possible. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda item number 4 is the public comment period for items not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public present that would like to comment on an item not on the agenda?
Chair Beamsterfer, I do not show anyone online requesting to speak, and I did not receive any e-comments.
No e-comments as well. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 5 for the approval of the minutes from the meeting of December 3rd, 2024. Does the commission have any comments or corrections?
No.
No, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add that I had requested some modifications to the minutes. They've already been corrected, so I move that we accept the minutes as written, as revised.
May I have a second on that?
I second it.
I'll do roll call for the vote. Commissioner Worth,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Vice Chair Papp,
Yes.
Chair Beamsterfer.
Yes.
And that motion passes 5-0.
Okay. And we're going to move on to discussion item action, but we're instead of doing 6A, we're going to move 6B up with the review and approval of the proposed street name change. And we have Deputy Public Works Director Jolene Ferris.
Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chairman, Commissioners. On November 19th, oh, I have a, there it is. Need a clicker.
It's coming.
Hope I know how to work this. All right. Okay, so on November 19th, 2021, the Secretary of the Interior issued Secretarial Order 3404, declaring the word beginning with SQ and here and referred to as SQ to be derogatory and requiring the removal of this name from geographic features. In response, on September 23rd, 2022, Assembly Bill 2022 was signed into law, which declared SQ an offensive ethnic, racial, and sexist slur towards Indigenous women and mandated the removal from all California geographical features and place names. The CI Hemet identified SQ Valley Street when public agencies were required to identify all instances of the use of SQ within its jurisdiction. Replacement names must be implemented by January 1st, 2025. The statewide implementation is being coordinated by the California Committee on Geographic Names, a liaison to the U.S. Board on Geographic Names. So the city sent out 47 letters on October 18th, 2024 to 14 different tribes and the 13 residents who currently live on SQ Valley Street. These letters inform the recipients of the requirement of AB 2022 and about an upcoming community engagement workshop that was to be held on November 20th, 2024. Prior to the community engagement workshop, the city received 4 email responses from 4 different tribes. The Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians and the Cahuilla Band of Indians both deferred to the Soboba Band of Luiseno Indians. The Fort Yuma Quechan Indian tribe deferred to the local tribes. And the Morongo Band of Mission Indians provided a recommendation for an alternative name to the SQ Valley Street. At the community engagement workshop, there was one person in attendance besides city staff who was a representative for the Saboba Band of Luiseno Indians. The following week, a formal recommendation was provided by the Saboba Band of Luiseno Indians to replace the street name, and I may butcher some of these names, so I'm going to do my very best, to Holeville Street. Holeville is the Payomkawish, or Luiseno word for California sagebrush, or Artemisia californica. California sagebrush is considered an important medicinal plant within traditional tribal culture, and the plant is consumed as a tea to aid with various illnesses. Its leaves are used as a poultice or hair wash to treat headaches, and is also chewed fresh or dried and smoked to relieve colds. So staff is recommending that Planning Commission approve the proposed street name to Holeville Street to replace SQ Valley Street. And I have, there we go. That is a map of the location. So I should have probably blown it out a little bit. I'm sorry. But to the east is Sanderson. There's the Catalina Basin. Just north is Esplanade, and that's where the street is located. So here to answer any questions if you guys have any questions.
Does the commission have any questions?
No.
No, that was a very nice letter that was received by, from Saboba, so it's neat that they commented and appreciated the cities reaching out to them, so I
Yeah.
think that's great.
It was great coordination at the workshop as well, being able to have that dialogue, so we appreciate it very much.
It's tough for somebody to change their street address.
Yeah.
On everything, you know.
And I am doing this on behalf of the building official, because our municipal code requires a building official, so I'm helping out our building official and presenting this to you guys. So.
Great.
Go ahead.
So I'm always the talkative one, right? I'm happy that this name was selected. I just have a couple of technical questions to ensure that it's going to be appropriate.
Okay.
Has this name been reviewed by the fire department or the police department in terms of dispatch having to possibly send emergency vehicles there? Do they have any issue or concern with the name or the pronunciation, or does it sound like any other street names in the city?
I have not actually coordinated, and that's a great point, but I don't believe we have any other street names in the city that compares to this, so.
Okay, and then secondly, has the postmaster been advised of the proposed name change, and have they added any comment?
So once it's approved by you guys, then, or by Planning Commission, then that's when Javier will take over and do the whole contacting the post office. That's a building thing, so I'm not familiar with that process, but they will be contacted.
Okay, and then I did work for the city for a few years a while back, and I do recall that the city yard has a sign shop, so they make the signs.
Yes, correct.
Are they able to print the name with the accent mark over the U, like as
I would-
proposed in the report?
I would think so, because I can type it. So I would think that they could do that. I would assume, because I know that they can do the accent above the N as well. So we have some street
Okay.
names that have that, so I would assume that we can.
I wasn't sure if they could do the tilde. I think that's what they call it.
Yeah, tilde, yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Absolutely.
your clarification on those items.
Of course, absolutely.
It's just one simple question, actually. How long does it take for a street like that to be updated to go into like Google Maps, where somebody types it in and they can go to the right location instead of
That's a
being
great question that I wish I had the answer to. I don't know. That's,
All right.
I would hope that it's pretty quick.
curious? I was just curious on that.
I would assume that when they do updates for their imagery and stuff, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they do a monthly update or something like that. I don't know.
I just feel bad for those people with their billing address and
Correct.
all their
And we
bank
did-
account.
And we did invite them to the community engagement so that we could kind of inform them on the process that would be going. So I was covering kind of this stuff from the AB 2022 perspective, and Javier was covering like the address change perspective for any residents, but none of the residents showed up, so.
Okay.
None of the residents showed up?
Mm-mm.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Didn't get a response from any of them either, so,
that's curious.
Okay.
yeah.
So do we just need an approve the proposed street? So may I have a motion for that, if there's any other questions?
Approve the resolution, yeah.
It is respectfully recommended, okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the proposed street name, Holeville Street, proposed to replace Squaw Valley Street per Assembly Bill 2022.
I second it.
Commissioners, please announce your vote. Commissioner Worth,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Vice Chair Papp,
Yes.
Chair Beamsterfer,
Yes.
and that motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Commissioners, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item 6A, presentation of potential zoning code update for digital outdoor advertising display signs. Community Development Director Monique.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Monique Alanese Flater, Community Development Director. This evening's discussion item is with regards to digital outdoor advertising display signs with relocation and net reduction agreement, and a review of a proposed potential draft ordinance to the zoning code. The proposal is in alignment with the council's strategic plan of quality of life, economic opportunity, community engagement, developing programs that offer support to community businesses, and organizational effectiveness. On August 13th, 2024, the City Council adopted the Hemet Rises economic strategy, which included replacement of traditional billboards with revenue-producing digital display billboards. So the city currently prohibits the construction of new outdoor advertising displays, commonly known as billboards, in all zones in the city. There are currently, as noted on this map, there are currently 11 static outdoor advertising displays located along the Florida Avenue corridor that are non-conforming. So as you can see on this map, it runs east to west, and they are clustered along the roadways. I'm going to show you some illustrations of those signs and what they look like today. But I wanted to discuss just briefly that the city's received inquiries from billboard companies to encourage the city to entertain possibly upgrading static billboards to digital, while reducing the number of billboards in the city. And the purpose of the ordinance that's being presented to you this evening in draft form is to reduce the overall number of outdoor advertising displays within the city while upgrading digital through a relocation and net reduction agreement. So the intent is that it would really reduce visual clutter, eliminate non-conforming signage, and facilitate relocation and distribution of the outdoor advertising signs to more appropriate locations within the city, to modern digital displays. This also eliminates the need for the city to pay compensation for removal of existing outdoor billboards in the city. So the map here illustrates in blue 11 existing billboard signs. And as provided in your staff report, I did provide more detail on the locations. And so I'm going to go through the sites briefly from west to east. Okay, so this site number 1 is located at the northeast corner of Florida Avenue and California Avenue. This is the just an illustration of that billboard for context. Site number 2 is 600 feet east of California Avenue on Florida. Site number 3 is 1,300 feet east of California. Site 4 is 2,500 feet east of California Avenue. Site number 5 is located along right at the corner of it's at Florida and Acacia, just to the east of the Hemet West development. Also further to the east is site number 6, 500 feet east of Acacia. This property in particular, this is privately owned, yes. Site number 7 is also within that general area, located on Florida and Acacia at the corner. Site number 8 is located 300 feet west of Acacia on the north side, next to the storage facility. And site number 9 is 500 feet west of Columbia, and now we're getting closer now towards on the east side of town, on Florida and Columbia. And site number 10 is located at the northeast corner of Florida Avenue in Columbia. Site number 11, we're going back to the middle part of town, closer to the commercial center area. This is located 300 feet west of Gilmore Street on Florida Avenue. This one billboard in particular is owned by others. It is not so the ownership of the billboards of the first 10 are Lamar, and this one is all owned by a private owner. So what I'm going to do is, before we get into the designs, these are some potential designs that are proposed, that there are potential that could be designed within the city and within suitable locations in the city. This is the map that identifies and shows you the locations of the existing, and in red, the desired relocation areas that have been identified so far. Tonight, we would like the commission's input on the ordinance, as well as billboard potential locations, and just overall input on the proposal. With that, I'm going to conclude my presentation, and I'm going to open up for discussion.
Thank you very much, Director Monique. We'll start with the commission questions, input. We'll start with Commissioner Worth.
So is the idea is to get rid of all the existing and replace it with just 2?
The idea is to reduce the number of billboards in the city that are existing. However, there must be a negotiated agreement on how many billboards can be eliminated for one advertisement graphical display, for a digital display. So there could be a ratio. There's not now. The end goal would be to eliminate all non-conforming billboards in the city in time. But today, we are just looking at where are the desired locations, where would be the optimal locations for a digital display sign in the city. And how many we end up reducing will depend upon what's negotiated through the net reduction and relocation agreement.
So I guess, just in a general sense, since some of these are private, I'm assuming that whoever owns them is getting revenue and would have some concern with losing that revenue. Would they get a share of the new location, or is that just they would agree to get rid of theirs and no longer have that source of revenue? Or how would that agreement work? How would those discussions with the owners?
Yes, our city attorney, Jennifer Mizrahi, is here this evening, who could provide some clarification on that.
So as I heard, I'm a little hard of hearing in my right ear as well, but pretty much the question was kind of who would get the revenue and how does that work, and what do we do currently with the existing boards, and you're assuming also that the underlying property owner gets that revenue. So kind of the question is twofold.
Well, in the situations where the existing billboard is privately owned, the property owner is
Good.
getting a revenue for someone advertising on that sign. How would we approach that?
So that would be up to the billboard company, and so the billboard company, I don't know, and I'm just gonna say Lamar for now, just because they own 10 out of the 11. So the billboard company would approach the underlying property owner. I don't know if Lamar actually owns some of this underlying property or not. Assuming they don't, maybe possibly on a month-to-month lease, maybe they're only a couple years out from whatever it is that their lease is up, that I don't know. That would be up to the billboard company. But with respect to, so I can't really answer, because I don't know what their lease agreement says. And for the most part, maybe it's safe to assume some of them at least are on a month-to-month basis. I don't know. That would be up to them to explain. I don't know if we have a representative currently for this, but we might. I don't know if anybody's here from Lamar.
And let me just add,
To answer your second question, so I don't have a firm answer for that one. But to answer your second question, which is, what would the revenue stream, the second question kind of be for the city? Is that your second question?
No.
No.
So
Okay.
let me just give an example. So one sign that I'm familiar with is I forget which number it is, but it's the one that's on the property of the Knights of Columbus Hall. This is just right there by California in Florida.
Okay.
And they do get a monthly rent or
Monthly, sure.
something
Yeah.
that they receive as revenue as a result of that sign being in their property.
So, yeah.
I'm just wondering how we would approach that kind of a situation if the goal is to, okay, we're going to get rid of this one and it's going to get moved to another location and all these consolidated. Are we taking revenue away from existing?
That's a very good point, but that's a private property matter. So that's something, honestly, that would be negotiated between the billboard company and the underlying property owner. The boards are currently non-conforming, and so obviously the goal, I think you could correct me if I'm wrong, but the goal is to get a lot of these non-conforming boards kind of reduced, and then have some kind of structure, possibly an LED, some kind of digital display erected with that kind of reduction. So they're already non-conforming.
I understand, but I mean, this particular one's been there for decades, right? So going back to my question, like, how would we approach this? Is this something where it's like a carrot and a stick kind of a thing, where we would go to these property owners and say, hey, you're non-conforming, you're gonna have to get rid of it, but hey, you can meet with Lamar and possibly get some compensation?
We may have a representative from the sign company available for discussion to talk about that point. We'll see if we have.
If someone is online, can you please let me know which caller you are?
So he's going to.
So Commissioner Worth, are you trying to get to, are they grandfathered in or not? Is that kind of your question?
Well, I mean, if you look at the exhibit showing all the existing signs and all the proposed signs or the relocation signs, so we're getting rid of however many the blue is and replacing it with 2. All I'm getting at is that there's some of those signs are revenue for the property owners.
That's correct.
And so how would that process work for us to go through, and I understand the intention is to clean up and get everything conforming and get rid of as many billboards, but how would that work for existing community residents that own property, have a sign, and are receiving a monthly check because they're renting that sign out?
Yeah. So it depends on what their lease is. So let me just, if it's a month-to-month lease, it would be up to the billboard company to negotiate their termination with, like, if we were using that board, if the billboard, not we, but if the billboard company wanted to use that board and take it down to build, another digital display somewhere else, that would be up to the billboard company to negotiate the termination of that lease. So you're absolutely correct. if that underlying property owner is receiving some kind of monthly rent or something revenue from that, I would assume that that would stop due to the termination of the lease. But that it wouldn't be initiated by the city. That would be initiated by, it's a private matter between the billboard company and the underlying property owner.
Gotcha. So the city is is supporting a private Lamar in this case to come in, and we're saying, hey, we're supportive of you renegotiating any of your existing leases to stop those so that we can set up, these conforming billboards at specific locations in the city.
So I don't know if the city would be quote unquote encouraging that. We are offering an avenue to, how I see this is, it's an avenue to reduce the number of static boards in the city. That's how I see it. I don't know if it's.
Yes, and also we have Ben Sandoval, our Economic Development Manager here. I think he would like to speak on this as well.
I'm also going to expand on that real quick for John. So a Billboard 11, for example, is privately owned. He wanted to update that billboard to make it more appealing and do a double-side advertisement because the city prohibits it. He couldn't do anything to it. Basically just let it deteriorate and come down to nothing, basically. And so now he's upset with that. He wishes he can update that billboard and create more revenue. And so he would be in the same situation with his billboard. If he wanted to update it, the question is what kind of agreement can be made between him? Because digital billboard, we can do multiple ads every 2-3 minutes. And so you can have 5, 6, 10 ads in 1 hour and create a lot of revenue versus that one ad that they have out there all day long, every day. So it's a lot of money maker and
It's just my concern would be that those that currently have them that would no longer have them, making sure that they're made whole, right? Making sure that there's that we're not kind of in a roundabout way strong-arming.
not being screwed out of it.
Yes, certain.
Good, those are good points, Commissioner, and if I may, good evening, Commissioners. Great to see you once again. I think it's been a few months that I've been here. Great to see all your faces to that point. We've been in discussion with Lamar in regards to where we're going to be placing the billboards, profit sharing. One of them was, to your point, and I think the city attorney kind of was alluding to it, is these are Lamar billboards, and they are on a month-to-month. I just kind of connected and reassured that. So at any point, Lamar can come in and pull their billboards. It was an agreement that they've made. They've been in those properties for quite some time. And when we went to ICSC this year, one of the biggest things was how do we eradicate Blythe? That's one of the biggest things in Florida Avenue. We have a lot of vacant, empty billboards that are stagnant, may have promotion that the city might want to have those skip every 6 seconds per se. So to your point, they would be going to the property owner. They would letting them know that their contract is over, and then we would be able to have in one of the desired locations that, based on some feedback, we can go on. But Lamar will be talking to the property owners individually to let them know once approved. Our goal is to have a 3-to-1 maybe ratio. So we have 10, we get 2 of them. We got rid of 6, but we get 2 electronic billboards. Originally, the concept was to have 3 of them, which would have gotten rid of all 10 of them, quite honestly. So we're at 2 right now. Depending on how sales go, billboards go, how things are going, then we would be able to probably elevate that to the 3rd one, but that's probably in a year or 2 out. So hopefully that answers your question, Commissioner. Great question.
Yeah, no, it does. I guess we just want to be careful that we're not seen as kind of as a third wheel here, kind of coming in on the backside and leveraging, this objective and kind of working with Lamar to say, hey, just go ahead and cut all those and redo it. I think there needs to be some very strategic outreach from Lamar with those different the existing, especially the ones that are currently making, and I know the Knights of Columbus that's the only one that I know of for sure. They are receiving a revenue, and that's a part of how they operate there. So wouldn't want to come in and say, sorry, you guys can't have that anymore. It's going to be transferred over to another lot. So just we need to be cautious on how we manage that. We don't want the city to be in the forefront of making them lose revenue.
Absolutely. We, I know the attorney will talk a little bit more on that, but we will get certain amount of slots every single day, the city would, so we can work with those businesses that may want to advertise as well, to making sure the transition is smooth and they don't feel like they lost someone. Because at the end of the day, we understand those are small businesses in these private lots, and they may be dependent on that stipend monthly, you know? So we want to make sure we're cognizant of that, Commissioner. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, my question, I got a couple. First of all, what is the nonconformity? What is the nonconformity? What is it, yeah, what is it specifically about? Because it feels like expanding onto his, it feels like the government's coming in. They've been there for a long time, especially Knights of Columbus. And all of a sudden, we're here. We're gonna go digital. We're gonna get rid of the blight. I guess maybe my house is not as appealing to some people as your house might be. And so from the public's view, the government
I
has a
understand your
lot of,
question.
it has a lot of power. And so it feels like we're coming in and going, you know,
Okay, so let me first explain a little bit about legal nonconforming uses, and then I don't know if it's gonna answer your question or not, but I'll do what I can. And by the way, this is not something that our office or anything is advocating. This is really a study session to get input.
I get it.
So legal nonconforming use is a use that used to be legal, used to be 100% legal, and then the law changed, right? So let's say this, right? Billboards were legal at some point back 10, 15, 20 years ago, I don't know. And then at some point, the law changed. And when the law changed, says, okay, now we're not allowing any more new billboards within the city. So the law changed. But what due process and constitutional law and all the good things that you're saying, hey, kind of feels not so great, is okay, great, the law changed, but wait a second, you're going to put me out of business. I've had billboards here for 10 years, and I'm in the billboard business, and this is what I do. And what the law says is, listen, for it not to be something called a taking, we have to provide, the city would have to provide a certain amount of time for the billboard company to get the benefit of its bargain, right? And in state law, there's actually something called an amortization schedule. There's an amortization schedule for signs, and I can't remember what the exact number is, but it's, I'm just going to make something up, so do forgive me. Let's say it's 10 years. So that means that the billboard, in order to get the benefit of the life of the board, and we're not taking anything from anybody as the government, the city, the billboard company would have, let's say, again, as an example, that those 10 years to continue on. And that's what we're in the process of right now. I don't know the year that the city of Hemet decided that it no longer wanted billboards. I don't know, but we could find that out. And we need to allow billboard companies a certain amount of time to allow them to continue with the legal non-conforming use. It happens also, not just with billboards, but it could happen with any use in the city, including housing, that's not the greatest example right now because of the housing legislation, but you could have a certain zone that used to be zoned commercial, and then all of a sudden, city redoes its general plan going, you know what, we've looked at this, the zone is no longer commercial, we have to immediately make it to residential. Well, wait a second, there's a whole bunch of businesses that have been thriving and that zone is commercial. You have to, as a city, have to allow them kind of a certain amount of time, reasonable amount of time, to allow them to continue with their business so it's not considered a taking. So where we're at right now, sorry, that was a little long explanation.
No.
But where we're at right now is the point where a few years ago, I don't know how long, sometime before, billboards were prohibited in the city. However, obviously they're still up, they're still constructed, they're still erected, they're still receiving that benefit. So, actually, as far as I understand, the billboard companies had come to the city and said, hey, listen, we've got some, deteriorating boards or some static boards. We want to be able to make a legal board. We don't want to be legal non-conforming anymore. We want to have a legal board. What do you think? Can we do this reduction? Can we, what are some of your thoughts? And as I understand, that's how some of this all went down. So that's kind of my understanding. Does that answer your question a little bit? Okay.
Yeah, very, very much. So some of their concession is to give us time where we would then be able to, and have the people that have been using these billboards, attorneys, NextGen, and those, have they expressed an interest in this kind of digital? Have they even been?
You mean the underlying property owners?
Yeah.
I don't know what conversations that Lamar may or may not have had with the underlying property owners. I wouldn't be privy to that. I represent the city.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't know whether or not Lamar contacted their underlying property owners. I do know that I'm going to say generally speaking, Lamar has very good relationships with the underlying property owners. So, I mean, that would be up to Lamar to contact their lessor, not up to the city. With this ordinance, it's just proposed, and it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination yet. But what's in the proposed ordinance is just an allowance or a permission that if a billboard company wanted to reduce the number of billboards and erect a digital display, that it has a mechanism to do that. We're not requiring anything. There's no requirement at all. It's just the allowance, because that was something that was expressed to the city, at least from Lamar. They wanted the permission or the allowance to do it, and this ordinance would create such a vehicle, so to speak. But to specifically answer your question, I don't know what they may or may not have said.
Digital billboard to me kind of feels, I don't want to use the word cheesy, but sometimes when I'm driving Moreno Valley and I look over, they're like flashing and what was that I just read, and
Kind of Vegas.
yeah, it's very Vegas, yeah. And so I get why the no billboard sign. I understand digital, and I understand where we're moving. It just is kind of funky to me, the digital. And I'm sure the city would benefit, and so would Lamar. I mean, I'm really literally at a loss for words, and that's a first, huh? But, I
So-
mean, I see where we're going. As long as the public doesn't feel like it's a take,
I agree.
Okay.
Commissioner Hill, any questions?
I sure do. First of all, I'd like to say that I like style number 2. I think it's style number 2, right? Is that the one with the circle, the logo, the Hemet look,
Brown.
circle logo? I think that one looks better than the concrete one. So I vote for that. I would also recommend that we put some sort of stipulation in the city code of the distance between signs. Now, when I was on the planning commission for the city of Placentia, we dealt with this, and we did a little bit of research, and the city of Carson put a stipulation of 500 feet between signs, and then if you drive down the 91 corridor in LA near the city of Carson, a sign company came in and they literally built a sign every 500 feet. I mean, it looks terrible. So let's put something in place. Thinking of the future, I know we're only talking about 2 signs right now for the city, and then the others for the privately owned ones, hoping that, they can do something with theirs. But, and so that would be a limit of 4 right now. But thinking of the future, let's put something in place of the city code that says, you can't have these signs more than X amount of feet, something like 2,000 feet, between them or something. And then I would also restrict it to the Florida Avenue corridor only. Nobody wants one of the one of the ridiculous proposals for Lamar in the city of Placentia was they wanted to put a signage in the middle of the street of a cul-de-sac, which is just absolutely terrible. I mean, we can't have something like that happen. And then the last thing that I'd like to ask is, do we know what the revenue is for the city, roughly, static sign versus digital? Anybody done a comparison? What's the difference in revenue between the static and digital?
So I don't have that information. Again, I don't know if somebody from Lamar would be here if they were to have that. That's not information that I have.
Does anybody know? I mean, is it 50% more, 100% more than?
We don't have that information at this time, and I don't think there's anybody on the line right now that could speak to the revenue side of things, but I imagine we would be bringing back to commission and also council further discussion on this topic, because it is
Okay.
important that we also have a workshop with the city council as well, and discuss and dive deeper into the benefits.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I yield.
Vice Chair Pop?
I'll start off with a little bit of a public disclosure statement. I have worked with Lamar Billboard Company before in the jurisdiction that I'm employed by. It has been within the last 2 years. It was a relocation agreement that took an existing static sign, single-faced static sign, and converted it to a 2-faced digital electronic display sign along the I-10 corridor. I don't believe my participation in that particular application will bias me in any way in favor of or against this project. I just wanted to disclose it for the public that's here this evening or watching or will watch on video, just to protect myself in the city, to disclose that. I did quite a bit of research on this particular issue because of my experience working with it, and I do have several comments. I forwarded some comments to our community development director, who forwarded those to the city attorney, but I'd like to go over some of those points. Mostly they're in reference to the actual wording of the ordinance. I would like to start by saying that Highway 74, where most, if not all, of these existing billboard signs are located, is classified by Caltrans, State of California Department of Transportation, as a primary highway. And under their standards, Caltrans standards for billboards, there are specific criteria for billboards located along primary highways. There are also those processes and procedures and guidelines are derived from the California Business and Professions Code for outdoor advertising signs. So there's a lot of cross-referencing. So in general, I'm going to be making my comments based off of Caltrans policies for a primary highway. I agree with Commissioner Hill that these billboards should probably be restricted to Highway 74, but we also have Highway 79 that runs through the city, and there's also a proposed realignment for Highway 79. And because that is also under the purview of Caltrans, we should probably have to consider the notion of allowing billboards on Highway 79. I do also prefer the second alternative. I looked at the first one, and I thought it's very contemporary looking, it's stylistic, it's gray, kind of like my hair, so I like that part of it. But I also like the neutral palette, earth tone palette of the second sign. I also am in favor of the single pole mounted sign, which can present a lot of challenges with the high winds that we get here. We're gonna have significant depth to these footings. Some of the alignments along Highway 74, there may be underground utilities, storm drains, things of that nature that could potentially preclude where some of those signs could be located. We are talking a massive footing, probably at least 20 feet deep into the ground and about 6 to 8 feet in diameter, if not larger, depending on the soil types. So with all of the public utilities that are on either side of Florida Avenue, they might need to be set back quite a bit. That would then be putting them on private property. Now, under the Caltrans provisions and under the Business and Professions Code, billboards are allowed on private property, provided there is a written statement of the property owner that allows for it. The proposed ordinance says they can only be located on city property, so I'm not entirely sure that provision is legal to enforce. I don't know if we're allowed to be more restrictive than state law. I got a lot more, sorry. So with respect to section 90-1285.1 A and B, both of those paragraphs talk about a reduction in the existing billboards, but it doesn't say how many. It doesn't even give an indication as to what might be appropriate or how by what metric would we determine how many billboard locations are appropriate. And I think that's something that would be important to add into the ordinance somewhere, if not in either of those two sections. Subsection 4DI, or 1, I believe this may also be inconsistent with state law. Per Caltrans, the written property owner consent allows for billboards. And per Caltrans, signs may not be erected in the public right, or in the right-of-way of the state highway. Now, the ordinance does state that it could be located on city-owned property or right-of-way. I think we need to strike right-of-way. I don't think we can allow it in Caltrans right-of-way. Subsection 4D2, I believe may be inconsistent with Caltrans criteria. That particular section allows for the billboards, and it states, including electronic display billboards, that they can be located within 500 feet of each other. But per Caltrans standard for a primary highway, they must be at least 1,000 feet of separation. Subparagraph 4D.
Can we go back to that?
Oh, sure.
Can we go back to that?
Sure.
So can it be, we can make it farther, right? We don't have to leave it to 1,000 feet. We could make it 2,000 feet if we wanted to.
I don't believe we have the authority to be more restrictive than state law. We can be less restrictive.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to be one, so please weigh in.
Sure. So with respect to the buffering, the 1,000 feet, Caltrans has various requirements. Some are 500 feet. I forget all of them. Some are 1,000 feet. Some I think are 1,500 feet. With respect to buffering between billboard to billboard, it is a minimum requirement, as I understand through the Business and Professions Code. I think it's a floor. So should this Planning Commission or the City Council eventually desire that, say, like, I don't know, I'm going to make something up, 2,000 feet, for example, is more appropriate, I believe that the Business and Professions Code is just a floor. So.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Subsection 4D, 4 and 5, or I, V, and V, lowercase v, those appear to be internally inconsistent with each other. Regarding the height as measured from the grade of the road, one says 15 feet, I believe, and one says 35 feet. So we need to get those consistent. Yeah. And then subsection 4D10, or lowercase x, per sub 1, all digital outdoor advertising displays must be on city-owned property. I don't know if we can legally enforce that. If Lamar, as a private entity, enters into a contract with a private property owner and it meets all of the separation criteria and it allows for a reduction of billboards, I think we would have to allow it.
Okay.
We might, is it possible, if that were the case, to require either the property owner or the sign owner, the sign company, to participate in a revenue sharing agreement with the city to provide income that's generated, a percentage of the income generated by that sign.
So is a question, if the billboard company were to, erect something on city-owned property, couldn't we enter into like a lease agreement or something like that where we would get revenue? The city would
No,
get
if they
revenue?
entered into an agreement with a private property owner as opposed to the city.
Well, that would be between, that's a private matter. That would be between the billboard company and the underlying property owner. So how the ordinance is set right now is, or, the proposed ordinance is that any kind of relocation would be on city-owned property where the city would be the lessor and the billboard company would be the lessee, so possibly generating some revenue for the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bring it up because I have seen other jurisdictions that allow billboards on privately owned property.
Yes.
And the city can either be a participant in the rental agreement, if you will, for revenues, or get basically free public service announcement type displays on the sign. And they go down to the second. I think like maybe 3 seconds is the shortest duration for a changing sign. Would like to point out that of all of the signs that are currently in place are static. So there's one source of revenue for each sign. Depending on its location or the size or the subject matter. If one's advertising Coca-Cola, but one's advertising the Super Bowl is probably paying a premium for that sign, but it's a very short duration. And it's only one sign until it's changed months, years later. With the electronic display signs, it can change as often as 3 seconds. So you could have 20 signs in a minute times 60 minutes in an hour, and each one of those signs gets somewhere, say, between $20 and $100 over the course of a day. That's a lot of money. They're going to generate a lot more revenue than all the existing signs combined currently. So I'm, as Commissioner Worth was kind of getting at, I would like to see, if possible, if it's legal, if there's a nexus for it, that any of the existing, we shouldn't have winners and losers in terms of who gets to have a billboard and who does not, if we already have 10 in place. So there should be some sort of revenue sharing for all the current property owners, perhaps sort of like not an assessment district, but maybe like an assessment district type financing where you have mutual benefit. Everybody pays based on their benefit. Whoever gets more benefit pays more or receives more. Whoever has less benefit receives a little less. But set it up in an equitable manner that shares the revenues amongst the current property owners of billboards. With respect to Section 5 of the ordinance, I wrote this in quotes. The agreement shall provide a reduction in the number of static displays or the number of static square feet. I'm curious because I don't believe that the intent of that statement was adequately placed into the ordinance. Is it the intent then to have fewer billboards in general, or just reduce the amount of static billboard sign space? The agreements, I think, will clearly state that, but I don't know that the ordinance in and of itself explains that fully. So
Noted, okay.
the intent is to remove visual clutter. So along these lines, do we know the sign area of each of the existing signs? They appear to be much smaller than what is allowed under the digital display, which allows signs, sign area up to 240 square feet. I'd be surprised if any of the existing signs was larger than 100 square feet. So I would like to propose that any combination of new electronic billboard signs, if the intent is to reduce visual clutter, the total amount of sign area would not exceed what is currently on static billboards. Not number of signs, but the actual total square footage of all the signs combined. If the intent of the ordinance is to remove visual clutter, so let's say all the current billboards, the 11 billboards in town today, let's just say hypothetically speaking, that amounts to 1,800 square feet of sign area. The future amount of digital display signage area should not exceed 1,800 square feet.
I see.
So,
So that would not be a reduction then?
Correct, but it would also not be adding, because I think what I got from this was that digital billboards could replace static billboards one for one, potentially, because it doesn't say otherwise.
Okay.
And we're going from roughly 100 square feet per sign, just by eyeballing it, driving by, and looking at the photos in the staff report. So if we have 11 that are each 100 square feet, that's 1,100 square feet. If we replaced all 11 of those with 11 signs that are 240 square feet of sign area each, and they're likely to be dual-faced, meaning a total of 480 square feet per sign, we're now looking at quadrupling the amount of existing sign area when the intent is to reduce the amount of visual clutter.
I understand. So the 1,800, I see exactly what you're saying. So if we currently have, let's argue, 1,800 square feet in static boards, to make sure that the net number would not exceed the 18, it would be a not exceed amount of the 1,800. And currently, as the Commissioner is correct, there is no specific reduction of, let's say, 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 or something like that. That would be a negotiated amount with council. That's how it's currently written, but understood. I could write something like that.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Papp,
Yes.
I'm sorry, if you could, there was the comment that you made a few comments ago, and I sincerely apologize, with regards to internal inconsistencies with, and if I'm misstating it, just let me know. Is it with regards to section D, 4? Yeah, so I just need to understand where the internal inconsistency is.
Okay, let me scroll back to it so I can look at it. I believe it's 4D, 4 and 5. So sub 4 there says the advertising sign area contains any component that is more than 15 feet in height above the ground as measured from the grade of the road, with an approximate dimension of 11 feet in height and 21 feet in width. The next one states, the digital outdoor advertising display shall not exceed 30 feet in height as measured from the grade of the road. So we have number 4 saying that it should not be more than 15 feet in height above the ground. And then the next one states it should not be more than, should not exceed 30 feet in height as measured from the grade of the road.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so we'll look at that a little bit more. I think we need to just clarify. It was a comment that was made when we reviewed it, just to make sure that the overall height may vary. But yeah, I see your point. I would need to look at it again just to make sure, because the height of the sign may vary based upon the grade of the road. And yes, if it was 15 feet in height and the dimension was 11 feet in height by 21 feet in width, so we're talking 26 feet in height as
So
measured from the grade of the road.
I think I understand what the ordinance is getting at. Basically, the underside of the sign should be no more than 50 feet above the ground. And the top of the sign, if it's going to be 11 feet tall max, should not be more than 26 feet above the ground then.
Right, and so what I'd like to do is just make sure that there's nothing that we put in there that would provide some flexibility, just so that we wouldn't have to come back for a variance in the event that the grade of the road and the height of the sign. But
I have
we'll
a suggestion, perhaps. So for sub 4, the underside of the frame of the sign should not exceed 15 feet above the ground. Or if it's at a slope, maybe the average of both sides of the sign, something to that effect. So it could be on a steep shoulder on the side of the road, and if you have it at a maximum of 15 feet on one side, the other corner might be 2 feet off the ground. So there needs to be some sort of flexibility in that situation.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that does it for my comments this evening on that item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Papp. How many of this billboard signs are city-owned, or where the properties are on? Are any of them city, and I think one is from what I saw on the diagram, but is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is, believe, there's one that is city-owned.
Evening, Commissioners. To your point here, to my knowledge, right as we speak, there isn't a billboard on city property. If there is, I'm not too sure on that one, but last time I had checked, the 10 billboards that are from Lamar, they're not on current city property. The
That is correct.
proposed
That's
future
right.
ones
That's
would be
correct.
on city, but not currently right now, Commissioner.
So none of the billboards are on any city property right now?
To my knowledge, they are not, and I've reviewed the 10 properties just to make sure we co-star who the property owner was, and I didn't see any that were from the city of Heme. Chair.
Thank you for the clarification, Ben. And then also I just want to mention that one of the selected or the recommended or proposed sites is city-owned. And that was the distinction. Sorry, I apologize for that.
So I agree. I like the idea of digital billboards. However, I think the first billboard, number one, is too close to Four Seasons, especially with it being lit up at nighttime. Four Seasons is right in the corner, right across the street on California Road. So I think two is not enough. I think to expand on Commissioner Hill, I like the idea of spacing them out every, so 2,000 feet, 1,500 feet, and therefore that gets rid of a lot of the clusters that are by California Street, and as you're coming into town, there's two locations where a lot of the cluster signs are, and that will kind of free up the cluster a little bit. I do like that idea. The digital billboards, we can definitely do emergency services with that. We can definitely engage the community and communicate when there's a Christmas parade and things like that. I can see a lot of benefits with the billboard. However, and I'm going to expand on the commission here as well, I think it's unfair if, at one point the city prohibited to do anything more with the billboards when landlords, the owners of these billboards, especially one that I know, and I'm just gonna, for the record, the one on Gilmore, I work right there. I see that billboard every single day, and the owner has been wanting to, for years, fix that billboard, and he can't, because the way the city has it. And he has expressed great interest in working with the city and trying to do a digital billboard there. But there just has to come an agreement between the property owner and between the billboard company and between the city. And one of the things I caught on to is on page 42, I don't remember exactly what item it was, but it did say in the statement of establishment, products, services, or activities which is not located, sold, produced, or furnished on this property where the sign is located. If I'm reading that right, does that mean that if there's a business on the same property where that billboard sign is, they can't advertise their business on that sign?
Definition. I think that comes from the definition.
Okay, yeah, so this is on page, just for all the commissioners, it's the definitions, page 40, starting on 41 and then going on to 42. It is the definition of a general outdoor advertising display. Shall mean regardless of the number of panels, meeting the following criteria. And we can look at that. And so B, the sign advertises any establishment, product, service, or activity which is not located, sold, produced, or furnished on the property where the sign is located.
So does that mean, for example, there's a billboard in a shopping center or nearby there on that same property, they cannot advertise in the midst of the other digital advertisements that are being advertised?
It's a really good point that you bring up. Normally when we talk about off-site advertising. It's a really good point. I think I'm gonna need to clarify the definition based upon your point, to actually include also, like the on-site advertising. It's oftentimes difficult to draft the sign codes, because for the most part, for the 99% of the time, billboards will advertise not necessarily what's on the property, but truly people buy advertising space, right? And so that's how, there's several definitions, and every single one that I have seen has actually stated that it is for off-site advertising. But you bring up a good point, so I think we might need to change that, if that's the advertising.
Because I know, like, for
on-site as
example,
well.
a couple of the billboards are in where there are stores, and, you know, like Billboard 11, for example, the Gilmore one, the owner owns the shopping center. There are tenants in there that want to advertise on that billboard as well for their own business.
Correct.
It's
I
not to
understand.
benefit the landlord, it's on to benefit the business owner. And so that just kind of, I don't think that's fair. You know, I think
Great point.
anybody
That
should
should
be,
be
if they want to put an ad in there, and let them pay the money and put an ad in there. I like concept 2 as well, the brown board. And there's a couple other ones Commissioner Papp covered, Vice Chair Papp covered a lot of them. Caltrans, that's another thing that even with the Billboard 11, that might be an issue we might run into, because the Caltrans easement. The street is unique, and so therefore I don't know, even if he has the opportunity, and if not, then I don't know how the city can address that. But a lot of them can be having Caltrans easement issues, and that's something that I don't know if we looked into each billboard to see, you know, Caltrans easement, if any of them are in that easement, and therefore there's nothing they can do because it's part of Caltrans. And also for, if it is privately owned, or the city wants to somehow engage in it, what happens is it gets graffitied or gets damaged by someone, and who's responsible to take care of that billboard? Sure.
So for the most part, the lessee, which in this case would be the billboard company, would have full maintenance responsibility for the board. It would be obviously their board, right? They're leasing just the underlying, they would be leasing the underlying property. So in many of the lease agreements, again, it could be negotiated, of course, but in many of the lease agreements that I've seen, the billboard company takes care of any and all maintenance to the board, if any of the lights go out to the board. I've seen it as well where they maintain also maybe the landscaping around the board. Oftentimes they put in some nice landscaping around the board, that kind of thing. So again, could be a negotiated term, obviously, but 9 times out of 10, it would be the billboard company.
Okay. Cause I know with the city LA and the metro area, they had I read an article about that, and the billboards are on city property. So that's not an issue. It's city owned, and they don't have to worry about private owners. But in the city of, I think, of Pomona, same thing happened where it got prohibited, just like Hemet. They had billboards, and then city of Pomona prohibited it. And then they decided to, I'm guessing it's a digital size situation, but it's, in return, some of the private owners are getting screwed out of it in a way. And I remember seeing a picture, I have it on my phone, where he used his own ad and says this billboard is under a current lawsuit, and gave it a section code number, and he goes, if anybody tries to tear it down, you will be sued too. And, you know, I don't want the city to face legal ramifications by making people shut down billboards and then to build a digital to benefit the city. So I don't know if you heard with the city of Pomona, but that's happened, I think, last year, just not too long ago.
And I've seen the boards.
Yeah. Oh. Any other input or discussion?
Quick question about Caltrans. It being the highway, obviously, has this been handed to Caltrans too? They've not seen this.
Correct. Caltrans has not seen a copy of this draft ordinance. They have not. I mean, this is public. They could.
No, I
maybe
understand.
they have. I have not sent it. I don't believe the city has sent this to Caltrans either.
Will it have to
No,
be
not at this time.
approved
I mean,
by
this
the
is public, though.
Caltrans.
You-
No, I mean, once we come with the ordinance and it's in words, then Caltrans needs to put their stamp of approval?
They do not. Caltrans does not need to
As long as
stamp.
we deal with the limitations they've given us.
Correct. Caltrans has very specific limitations. I would actually have to go back into the Outdoor Advertising Act. That's what the act is called under the Business and Professions Code. It's a very, very detailed, long statutory scheme, and it depends on if there's a scenic highway, if it's a regular highway, if it depends on whether or not it's a corridor, how many feet. I mean, it's just the number of regulations is insane. It's a lot of regulations. But to answer your question, Caltrans does not need to approve this ordinance at all. The city, to the extent that state law regulates certain, billboards within the city, to the extent that that the city must comply, I would assume that the city would comply. Last thing I would want is for litigation. I'm part of the city attorney's office. Believe me, I don't want to see that either.
Thank you.
Chair, if I could just add to that and add a comment, is that the intent was not to propose the digital displays to be installed in the Caltrans right-of-way. We could look at the property that is fronting Florida, that is city-owned, and that's just, that's something we would have to just double-check and verify. But the location number 2, after speaking with our Public Works Director, Domenegoni Parkway is not Caltrans. And we do have control of Domenegoni Parkway. Thank you.
So my just general thought is, like I said, the Knights of Columbus, I think, is maybe representative of others. They get a little bit of money every month, and they signed a 50-year lease with Lamar. I would just want to be cautious as a city in our role in affecting that in any way, whether it's real or perception. We need to be cautious that we're not seen as part of that, taking something away and then moving it onto city property, and then the city getting the revenue that a private and that's had a 50-year lease is no longer able to get. So we just need to be cautious of that, and maybe as part of this effort, reach out to those existing property owners and include some level of a financial analysis with this, from a city benefit perspective, to also a impact to our community. And I like number 2 as well.
It would be nice to know exactly who owns each sign. It'd be nice to know who owns each of the existing signs. Does Lamar own them? Or does the business that it's on own them? Or does the city own them? The existing ones?
The existing boards, the actual board themselves.
Well, who's getting the revenue from each?
Oh, okay. Then I
billboard
don't
that's
know.
there
I
now.
have to defer to staff. I don't know who the underlying property owner is.
We will bring back that information for the commission.
Okay,
Typically, it's a lease agreement. The property owner leases area
I
to
understand.
Lamar.
I understand.
In
I'm
exchange
sure
for-
Lamar has a lease agreement with each one of
Yeah.
them, but who's getting the revenue from Lamar?
Be the property owner. They're
Okay.
still getting a share of the
Who
revenue.
is that? Knights of Columbus is one.
Yeah.
Who's number 2? Who's number 3?
Yeah, how many property owners of the 11 locations are
Right.
they all
'Cause
different?
I'm thinking of something in my mind about not being a bad actor, coming from the city and being a bad actor and putting these people out of revenue. But how many are we talking about? Are we talking about 8 or just 2?
Yeah, and then also the quality of the signage too. I'm sorry, it's Jennifer. The quality of the signage, that they're limited and their static display. They are very limited in the revenue that they're going to receive versus the digital display. You have a lot of opportunity and expanded opportunity for signage throughout the city.
Right.
Yeah, but that if we get rid of them, they won't get any revenue, and the city will get the new revenue for the new signs, which is good for the city. Just like I said, just need to be sensitive as we go through that.
I do have another question. Has the city or anyone else made an attempt to have Highway 74 between, I don't know the crossroads, so Highway 74 is deemed a scenic highway east of the Palms to Pines Highway, so east of the ranger station, I guess, off of Florida Avenue going east towards Palm Desert is a scenic highway. And then Ortega Highway, so basically from the other side of Lake Paris, the west side of Lake Paris, through to Orange County on Highway 74 is also designated a scenic highway, but nothing in between is a scenic highway. So the reason I'm asking is the city attorney brought it up, and it sparked a comment that I was going to make, is if there's any intention to make Florida Avenue a scenic highway, that could potentially impact how this ordinance is written in terms of what would be allowed and what would not be allowed. So just curious if there is any plan or intention to designate the remainder of Highway 74 as a scenic highway. Does that basically be stretching the entirety of Hemet?
I like the optimism.
That's a good question too, because some of our Florida Avenue portions are scenic highway, with the scenic highway setback for landscaping. So
Yes.
we would need to look into that a little bit more.
But that's locally designated, I
Yes,
believe,
that's
not
right.
state
It's not
designated.
state designated, yeah.
And the same question for Dominigoni Parkway. It's not a highway, but portions of it are deemed scenic by the city, but because it's not a state highway, it would not be deemed scenic by the state, therefore that would not impact Dominigoni Parkway. Okay, just wanted to make that clear. And just thought I'd mention, the city already does have electronic display signs, several of them actually. Most of the time you're gonna see these at the schools. I think every school in town has one. There's also one at El Patron. I remember processing that back when it was, I think it was still, no, it went from the Anchor to the Palms. And they built it ridiculously high, and we had a code enforcement action with them. They had to lower it and a few other things. But I'm very familiar with the LED display signs because I wrote that part of the ordinance back in 2013. So that part is there. All cities are transitioning to LED display signs on their major roadways, the freeways. I think we have the opportunity to do something nice here and reduce the visual clutter. I'm in favor of it, of all parts of it. As many of the commissioners pointed out, I'm also concerned about the loss of revenue to the property owners that have the current signs. So I'd be a proponent for some sort of revenue sharing program that assists any property owners that may lose that revenue.
One other, just an input, it might be a dumb input, but on page 67, again, I'm not sure what, but it's under violations. And the wording of it says a fine not exceeding $50 for the first offense, and then a fine not exceeding $100 for the second violation, and then the third, a fine not exceeding $250 for the third within 1 year. And, you know, in the medical side of business, the terminology we like to use is per calendar year, because I don't know, somebody would to get the first violation, is it 1 year from that first violation? Or is it a calendar year from January to January? I don't know if that's really even important, but it could be argument. And, but that's it. That's just something that kind of could be And I agree. I think the owners that own the billboards, the land that they should have an opportunity. And, but I would like to reduce the cluster areas out there, like by California Street, where there's multiple billboards, but I just don't know if that's under one owner or if that's multiple owners and the billboards are on there. But that would be nice to reduce the clutter there in those locations. And everything else the rest of the commission said. Any other recommendation? Can I have a recommendation to, well, we just respectfully received the presentation of the zoning code update, a digital outdoor advertising display sign, and associated relocation net reduction agreement, and 2, provide input. We did, so that's been filed.
Well,
Okay.
whether you wanted it or not, you got the input.
Item 6C is the establishment of a 2-member ad hoc committee for review for commercial facade improvement program applications. Community Development Director Monique.
Thank you, Chair. In June of this year, the City Council adopted the Commercial Facade Improvement Grant Program. And the Planning Commission may recall making that recommendation for approval to the City Council to enhance physical appearance and attract new visitors to the city's major commercial corridors. And since then, we have been working through that process. There were 2 components to the grant, with the micro grant for downtown specific plan area properties, and micro grant or macro retail commercial center properties. And we have received to date 19 micro grant applications and 6 macro business center grant applications. And the request this evening is to establish a 2-person ad hoc committee to evaluate and prioritize the applications that we receive once they are completed for future Planning Commission consideration. And the program guidelines have been provided to you in the staff report for your review. The applications are prioritized according to the criteria outlined in the guidelines, in that it's just something for the commission to be looking for when looking at those applications. But we will be bringing those to the ad hoc committee once they are completed. This week we are hosting a mandatory meeting for all grant applicants to provide an overview and status of items that need to be, provided to complete the applications as we move forward through this process. I imagine that we will, it'll be similar to the trash enclosure pilot program. We're going to be exploring the process and working with applicants to obtain architectural design renderings and to better understand the various types of improvements that are eligible. And then once we have complete applications, we would like the Planning Commission ad hoc members to review the applications for consideration and prioritization.
So we basically need to appoint 2 commissioners.
Yes.
Any commissioner would like to be a part of the ad hoc committee and reviewing the grants?
If there's no one else, I'll volunteer.
And I can do it as well if nobody else wants to.
I probably should not, because I believe one of the applicants is a location I work at.
Okay.
So
Otherwise, I
Commissioner
would love
Worth,
to.
and Commissioner Worth and I, and you guys want to take a chance at it? No. Okay.
Okay.
So Commissioner Worth and
Okay.
myself.
Okay. Thank you.
And when is that meeting?
We will follow up with Chair Beamsterfer and Commissioner Worth once the applications are deemed complete and that we're ready to present them for you to review and prioritize. We are holding a meeting, and you're welcome to be in that meeting to listen in on the meeting, and it is going to be this Thursday at 3 o'clock. Oh, excuse me, it's going to be, I'm sorry, we have it tomorrow, at 3 o'clock, and we will forward that information over to the commission
Will this be on YouTube?
via Zoom.
Okay. I'll definitely try to get on there. I get off at 4, but I'll try to get on there at 3. Okay. Moving on to department reports, 7A, city attorney reports. City Attorney Jennifer.
I have a 6-hour report, and I'm sure I have nothing.
We've been
Thank you
through
so
this.
much for having me, and it was very nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 7B, community development reports. Director Monique.
I just want to say thank you to Jennifer for joining us today and assisting us with preparation of the documents. And then also, I just want to just remind the commission, if you are receiving emails for your city email, if you could please let me know at the end of the meeting that you are receiving correspondence through your city email. That way we can transition to city email only. Thank you. And that concludes my reports.
Okay, and future agenda items, Community Development Director Monique.
Oh, okay. So we have the High Point Community Apartments. We do know we're scheduling that. That also includes an initial study that is being posted on our city's website, on our Community Development Planning Division's environmental page. So that'll be posted. I believe it's either posted today or tomorrow. And it is going to be scheduled for a public hearing in January. We are still working through several other and receiving other applications right now that we're preparing for future agenda items. Thank you.
Okay, and 7D, Planning Commissioner's Report. Director Monique.
Commissioner Worth?
I just wanted to comment that I really appreciate the opportunity to be involved with the joint meeting yesterday. I think that provides a lot of benefits, not just to the community in terms of seeing kind of a consolidated group of folks representing them, but it also helps us to get to get a more kind of collective view of the opinions of the city council, and also just to continue the meet and greet and do it in this setting. So I appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to maybe some more of those in the future on big issues. Also, I appreciated the opportunity to meet with the applicant, J.D. Fields, prior to the meeting. I think that would have gone a long way, that same approach would have gone a long way for the Simpson project if we could have had those opportunities for discussions. And so I would just encourage, if there's a way to maybe make that more of a standard option for applicants if they have an interest in reaching out, and having a meeting to kind of get a feel of what they're going to be facing when they come for public hearing. It's my understanding that there was that staff had thoughts and ideas on what would be approved, and the applicant was not really listening to that as much as maybe they should have. And so it may have helped reinforce the staff's position and help with those discussions and negotiations if they had kind of a precursor of an understanding of what they were going to be facing when they came to public hearing. So just kind of a procedural, I think that's very helpful, and encourage that as an option for applicants as they're going through the process. I know I would be personally willing to come into the city office and meet with them just like we did with J.D. Fields. So, anyways.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark?
I too appreciated being included last night. It was super informational, not only to watch interaction with the council and the public, us and the public, but just the general feel in the room was no other word than community. We all were a community, and I think they felt their voices were being heard, and that's what I'm here for, and it really felt good. The other thing, so thank you. The other point I want to make is Florida's looking good. Having that blacktop down and smooth and, ooh, I can't wait for the lines to go in, so some stay in the right lane because it's kind of a if you want to be here kind of thing. But it does, it looks really good, and kudos.
Thank you. Commissioner Hill,
I have nothing to report, thank you.
Vice Chair Pat.
Yes, a couple of things. I regret that I was not able to attend yesterday evening. I wish I could have been. I will commit to watching the video so I can see the discussion, and I do believe what Commissioner Clark mentioned is correct, just based on the turnout that we've been seeing on some of these large-scale, high-profile projects that will be impactful to the community. Whatever, the public's opinion is on a project, we don't know what it is if they don't express it to us. So thank you to everybody who has come out to meetings and made their opinions known. If there are additional opportunities in the future for joint sessions, I'd be very pleased to attend. I was on a trip over the weekend. My stepson, I'm going to throw a little shout out, my stepson Tyler graduated with his degree in construction management from Colorado University at Denver. He's already been working full-time for a road construction company there doing estimating for aggregate work. When I returned to work on Monday, I had a mountain of work to do and issues that needed resolved, and it just took too much of my time in the day to be able to leave early. So the earlier sessions are difficult for me. I work out of town. If it's possible in the future for joint sessions, if we could hold them at approximately the same time as planning commissions, it would be much easier for me to attend. With respect to the city email, I've been having difficulties accessing the city email. I don't know if it's a VPN issue or some other back-end access issue into the city's website, or if I can just do it through Outlook. I'm not sure. But I've not been able to use my city-issued email, so I'm still continuing to use an email that I created specifically for purposes of City of Hemet business, so there's no conflict there. But I would like to transition to the city's email address. And then I've seen on social media that there's been a very positive reaction to the Chick-fil-A pop-up, so kudos to whoever organized that event, and would love to see more events like that with other restaurants, other stores, maybe even if that's possible, to show them that we want them here. If they come here and do a pop-up event, we will give them our business. Trader Joe's, are you listening? We will 100% turn out as a community and support any business that wants to do business here in the city of Hemet. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Beamsterfer.
I'm going to expand on that. So I think we sold out the first day, 350 sandwiches. Wow. And people are waiting over an hour in line in the cold. And it had a really good turnout. So I'll be there again this Friday to buy some more sandwiches. And highly encourage all of you guys to be there too to buy some sandwiches. I believe tomorrow is ribbon cutting for Dutch Bros. And so we're going to get Dutch Bros open tomorrow. And the library is open 5 days a week now downstairs. So finally we have a full-time library open 5 days a week. Anything else? No? So with that, if there's no further business to discuss, the meeting is adjourned to the next planning commission meeting, January 7th, 2025 at 6 p.m.